Coming up ahead in this episode of X Talk Spotlight.
Meaningful engagement happens when people feel included in the conversation. When there's a space for sort of cross-functional voices and not just the CRO's running point, but where sponsors are present and participating so that they feel included, and that when everybody is in the room, whether it's a PI, a study coordinator, or someone even from the data team, that they walk away knowing exactly what they're responsible for and feeling genuinely motivated to execute.
Hello, and welcome to X Talk Spotlight, illuminating insights from subject matter experts and industry thought leaders. I'm Sonia Hunt. In this episode, we're asking the question, are your clinical study meetings building momentum or wasting time?
In clinical research, meetings have the power to move a study forward or stall it entirely. From ditching the 200-slide presentation deck to planning meetings that foster real conversation and clarity, intentional structure is crucial to creating momentum, whether you're planning a kickoff, training, or advisory board meeting. In this X Talk Spotlight, I spoke with Saimah Awan, Executive Vice President, Meeting Operations at Scout, to explore what meaningful engagement really looks like in life sciences meetings. Together, Saimah and I discussed why format, agenda design, and timing matter now more than ever. Saimah also challenged the notion that the investigators' meeting is the true starting point, offering insights on how early engagement with sites and patients can improve trial design and lead to smoother execution down the line. Thank you for taking the time for the Spotlight interview, Saimah.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to this discussion. Thank you.
So to kick things off, can you tell us a bit about clinical meeting planning and how that can support successful trial execution?
When people think about clinical meetings, they often focus mainly on the logistics of it. So things like obviously booking the hotel rooms, booking, the meeting room, that sort of thing, sending out the invites, ordering the food and beverage, and making sure that they have, all the AV, audiovisual things in place. And, yes, that matters, of course, but it's really just the tip of the iceberg, just the surface of things to come for a meeting. At best, the meetings are just operational milestones. They're inflection points. They bring people together at critical moments in a study and can either move things forward or even stall them out. So when we are planning the meetings, we're really trying to focus on building clarity, creating alignment, and driving momentum. And that could mean a protocol review session before enrollment or a closeout meeting, any part of the study, there can be a meeting that sort of helps wrap the study cleanly and confidently. We have so many various feedbacks from our clients, but one of my favorite ones and one of my favorite stories was about a face-to-face meeting that took place right before enrollment began. And they said it gave their study a jolt of energy, that people walked out with clear expectations, they were excited and they were ready to get going. And that's what we're aiming for, meetings that don't just inform, but they energize and they get people excited about the study and about working on the study.
Now, in your experience, what does meaningful engagement actually look like in life sciences meetings?
That's a great question because, we get asked all the time, we want our meetings to be engaging. And, I think the bar for engagement has become really low and, people show up, they click through slides, they nod along, they, make notes and, we call that a successful meeting. But actually real engagement goes much deeper than just attending the meeting, Meaningful engagement happens when people feel included in the conversation, when there's a space for sort of cross-functional voices and not just the CRO's running point, but where sponsors are present and participating so that they feel included, and that when everybody is in the room, whether it's a PI, a study coordinator, or someone even from the data team, that they walk away knowing exactly what they're responsible for and feeling genuinely motivated to execute.
And Saima, we've all sat through those 200 slide presentation decks, but what's the alternative? How do you design meetings that encourage real interaction and momentum?
Oh, yes, we've all been there, haven't we, where we're sat through hundreds of slides and, that slide fatigue is a very real thing. So the alternative really starts before the meeting even begins, that, you have to build your agenda with real intention. So not just the check boxes of the things that you want to cover, but to serve your actual goals for the meeting. And, what do you want people to do differently after this meeting? That should drive everything. That what you want them to come away with is genuinely what you want them to come away with. So in practice, that might mean incorporating breakout sessions where teams can work through specific study challenges, or using interactive tools such as polling, discussion prompts, even light gamification, really things that will help keep people thinking and participating, not just sitting there passively watching a slide deck. It also means, cutting the fluff. You don't need 200 slides if you know what your core message is. And if you've really understood the protocol beforehand, you can tailor the content to what matters most and structure it in a way that leads to action, not just information. Meetings feel like a moment of traction, not a formality. That's the difference.
And what happens when there's no intentional planning for engagement?
Then they become a standard meeting, right? Like we've been talking about, it's a slide deck and the presenters are going through that slide deck and presenting, and people are sitting there paying attention, maybe not paying attention, and you don't get the kind of questions that you would have done. You will get some, obviously, some people come already armed with questions, but, I think that's the hard part, is that you won't get as much out of that meeting because people will be just sat there quietly watching the slides and watching the presenters.
Now, how do you decide which meeting format, whether face to face, virtual, or hybrid, best fits your goals and audience?
For any meeting, we always start by asking, what's the goal of this meeting? What are we trying to achieve? And who needs to walk away feeling aligned? Once that's clear, we can start thinking about the format. I mean, it's pretty instant. Face to face is still the gold standard, when it comes to building connection and trust, especially for the high stakes meetings like the kickoffs or the protocol rollouts. Nothing beats being in person. There's something about being in the room together that you just can't replicate in any other way. But that being said, obviously we've all come through a time post COVID where not everybody wants to travel. So hybrid can be a powerful option as well when done well. And the virtual absolutely has its place still. Of course it does, especially when you plan it, intentionally. And by that, I mean, clear tech, strong facilitation, and thoughtful participant roles. For example, we've worked with sponsors to identify key investigators ahead of time who can drive engagement through virtual meetings, not just present. So again, you have the same thing like sitting in a room watching 200 slides, just sitting at home watching slides, but they are actively contributing to the energy. We ask them in advance to sit on a panel to discuss whatever needs to be discussed. And that way you build real engagement. And the key here is to match your format to your function. Don't default, but design, because you want to get what you want out of any type of meeting, be it face to face, hybrid, or virtual.
And Saima, could you tell us how early engagement with both sites and patients, even before the first investigators meeting, can set the stage for more meaningful and effective meetings as studies progress?
Well, we often think of the investigator meeting or the IM as the official start, but by that point, so many key decisions have already been made. So early engagement, especially with the sites and patients, gives you a chance to shape those decisions with real world insight, not just operational assumptions. For example, take the patients. When they're involved early through focus groups, interviews, or advisory boards, they can flag things that we might miss, that visit windows that don't work for people with jobs or kids, confusing instructions, or logistical burdens that could cause someone to drop out later. It's not just about being inclusive, it's about designing protocols that are actually feasible and respectful. Sites too, benefit from earlier input. If you give them a seat at the table during the protocol planning, they're more likely to feel brought in and better prepared by the time your first IM rolls out. And that means your meetings won't just be informational, they'll be reinforcing an alignment that already is in motion. And look, it doesn't have to be complicated. The right meeting partner can handle all those logistics, from the patient travel to compliant compensation. So you can really focus on the value of the input, not just operational headache. Everybody's time poor these days. And so, a right planner will help you with that. So when early voices shape the conversation, your meetings become much more focused, more relevant, and ultimately more successful.
Well, thank you very much, Saimah, for speaking with us today. We really appreciate your time and insights.
No, thank you. It was a pleasure and nice to talk about things that are close to my heart. So, no, thank you again for having me.
We look forward to learning more about Scout's work in clinical meeting planning. Thank you all for joining us for this X Talk Spotlight feature. We hope you enjoyed the discussion.